I've loved basketball for most of my life. I've played it a lot and I've watched it a lot. And since it's the start of the 76th season of the NBA, I want to share the history of basketball and focus on the creation of basketball, when it became popular, and the effect it has had on the world. Basketball was created in 1891 by James Naismith. James was a gym teacher at the Young Men's Christian Association Training School in Massachusetts. One day it was raining pretty hard and they couldn't do anything outside. So James came up with an idea. He decided to grab a peach basket and he hung it up in the gym, and then he grabbed a soccer ball and told his students to pass it around and shoot it. That was such a great idea, especially during the winter time, because it was Massachusetts and they had pretty bad winters. Later on, he began making it more accessible to other schools, and it became so successful that it became a professional sport. But it wasn't until the 1980s where it peaked. The 80s had some of its greatest players to ever live. Sure, the 70s had some good players like Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and Julius Erving, but they were no Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan. These three and other players in the sport made the game so popular. People wanted to see Magic versus Larry Bird, as represented by the sock. And then, of course, you had one of the greatest players to ever live. I'm talking Michael Jordan, the GOAT. And people wanted to see him play. And the way that people were able to see him play was through TV. In the 70s, people were watching basketball on TV, but not as much, just because there were so many things going on in the world that made the NBA on TV not that popular. People noticed that a lot of the players were doing drugs, and the city teams were winning more than cities like Los Angeles or New York, and that really wasn't bringing in people. But then when Magic, Larry, and Michael came, they brought in that viewership that the NBA was looking for, and that changed the NBA and TV drastically. And since basketball was on TV more, other countries were able to start watching the games, and that has affected our today's game. Basketball is now a worldwide sport. Last week, the NBA put out a report that there are 120 international players on rosters. That is a crazy number. And some of these global players are some of the best players to play today. I'm talking Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, and the two-time reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. These are big players that have affected the game in other ways that players in the past and players from internationally have never affected the game before. But also there are other minor leagues that are really popular today. There's FIBA, EuroLeague, and the Chinese Basketball League. And many of these leagues are popular because you have players who might have done good in college but weren't good enough for the NBA playing in those leagues. But you also have the people from those countries playing in those leagues who might not be able to make it in the NBA. Hopefully you've learned a lot about basketball and want to learn more. I hope you've come to know who came up with basketball and why the 80s were so important for basketball and the impact that it has on the world.